So this is part 2, and we're going to be removing the shutter. So there are 2 screws in the front and 1 in the back, and finally there is the flash sync green wire that needs to be desoldered. So we're going to be paying close attention to the disassembly because I don't have a very good reassembly video of the shutter. I actually made quite a lot of mistake trying to put it back together. So when you're putting yours back together, kind of refer to the disassembly video. So out comes the shutter after the front and rear screw is removed. So I struggle with it a little. I think what's catching is the green flash sync cable. So that needs to be desoldered. Also pay close attention to how that cable is routed in the shutter assembly. Again, in my assembly, I didn't cover the reassembly of this, and actually did forget to do this correctly, but it is routed in a very specific way. So it goes in the front, in from the back, and into the front, and then back into the back, and then actually gets soldered. So that looping that they do there, pay attention to that when you're reassembling the shutter to the body. So just desolder that and gonna get it out the way. So one of the common things I've actually seen, I've gotten 2 of these cameras now, and the effect of the shutter getting greasy or oily is that it doesn't complete its action correctly, and the mirror ends up getting stuck. So you think it's one of those things that you fix at the bottom, but it's not. So if the shutter finally completed its travel on its own, I guess I must have flexed it in a particular way that it actually let it. So here I'm just warning that I tried to remove the grease by drenching the shutter in acetone, and it didn't work. It just smeared the oil all over the place. So now I'm going to take it apart completely and polish it with Q-tips and acetone. So here we're gonna be paying close attention to the disassembly because there isn't a very detailed assembly video. So remember, you have to take those 2 screws off on the front, which are the 2 screws by the gear train, and the 2 screws on the end. All the screws are kind of coated in some kind of lacquer. You can release that with some acetone. I don't think that's completely necessary, but it's good precaution. You definitely don't want to strip these screws. So a good screwdriver is recommended. They're all JIS, but if you don't have a JIS screw, it's possible to modify a PH 001 to do the task. But highly recommended to get a set of JIS screwdriver. I got a set from ifixit.com because here I actually had quite a little bit of trouble trying to get one of the screws out with my modified Phillips screwdriver, and I was kind of worried of putting too much pressure on the assembly because it's very thin metal. So once this comes off, there are separate planes, as you see for the first and second curtain. And that's the main tricky part of this camera. I mean, the shutter assembly, making sure you separate those two planes with the divider, and also the positions of all the shims. So finally get the last screw out. You want to make sure you keep the screws in a very, very good location. You don't want to lose them. I'm here just dropping them here on the table. It's kind of risky. All right, so that first panel comes off, and then we can see there's a washer and a panel. There's a washer that came off, so there's two washers, and then the panel. The small half panel. So that washer is supposed to go up there. Pay attention to that. As you can see, the one of the reasons why the shutter was kind of slow was it was definitely oily, but it looks like it was also bent. Not so sure how much the bentness actually affected the shutter functionality, because I went down this battle of trying to bend that, and I tried heating it up and clamping it while it was heated. I found some forums online that recommended that. Do not do that. Do not heat it. It is just impossibly hard to get even heat around that small piece of metal. I actually ended up bending it more with just the heat. What I ended up doing was actually working it with my finger, and slowly just working it and slowly working and slowly working it, and then I was able to bend it. But using the heat and clamping it and trying to let it like release the stress, no, just you're not gonna get the heat evenly applied. I just couldn't, I just have a cooking gas stove, so I couldn't. Maybe you can, but I don't think it's a good route to go down. Excuse me. So there are screws that hold the leaves in place. We're going to take those screws off, and also pay attention to the plastic. The first plastic, there's one plastic that goes over everything, and then there's I believe this is the second curtain, because it comes down second. So there's a plastic spacer that goes first, then the second curtain, then the plastic spacer, then the first curtain, then the plastic spacer. So I think there are 3 plastic spacers in total, maybe 4. We'll see, but pay attention to them. I don't think we've gotten any more washers. So here we can lift it out. And now the divider. So you can see there's a divider that separates the first curtain from the second curtain. So that divider needs to be in place. If you put them on the same plane, they would collide with each other when you try to cock the shutter. So you have to put that divider in there when you're reassembling. So I'm over here talking about reassembly, but also disassembling the shutter. So see, if when I took off the second curtain, you can see the second plastic spacer. And below that guy is 1 washer. There is only 1 washer on the top side. So now we've counted out 3 washers. 2 washers go on top of this spacer. that I'm playing with right now. One washer goes on the top side. That's and then there's no washer on the bottom. Pretty sure. And remember, the divider goes between the first and second curtain. Yeah, I'm just trying to take pictures. I feel like I didn't take enough pictures. So it definitely, I didn't have the ease of ability of reviewing the video, so I think that definitely contributed to my error. But I need to come up with a better way of reviewing videos. And now we have the fourth washer, which is on the bottom side of behind the spacer. So the third washer is on the top side in front of the spacer. The fourth washer is on the bottom side. Technically, I think that's the top side. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so let's freeze that. So the third washer is on the bottom side. Not there. It's in front of the spacer. So that was I took a picture and I was definitely wrong. So the third washer is in front of the spacer on the bottom side, and the fourth washer is behind the spacer, the divider, I guess, on the top side. And beneath all of it is the second kind of half spacer. So the second half spacer goes behind the second curtain. So now we have 4 washers. So yeah, basically I just had to work that metal till it was flat. I'm not so sure if that bent leaf really mattered, because the shutter works pretty well. I haven't tested it, but it's pretty snappy. So I'm not so sure if you have a bent leaf, if you need to really worry about it. If it's kinked, then that might be a problem. But that was just bent, so I don't know. Not so sure if my fiddling really helped. But definitely you want to degrease the part, so you want to get all that oil off of it. I used acetone. I'm sure there's probably better ways of going about it. Acetone's kind of tricky because you have to polish. You have to. Yeah, basically you just have to polish it. You can't soak it, and because it just smears the oil everywhere. So here I actually, yeah, so I basically had succeeded in bending it by working it and working it. And I was just tired of working it, essentially, is why I basically just given up. So I'm basically, from further on here, I'm just gonna kind of cut through and assemble the shutter. Again, I don't really show too much of my assembly because I made a lot of mistakes. I also took off the second curtain. Again, that's pretty similar to the first curtain. You just have to take that screw out and again remove the spacers. And the very first thing you have to put down is that spacer. And I'm sorry that I'm actually kind of showing this, but in reality I messed up a lot in the assembly, so I'm hoping you would learn from my mistakes and follow closely the disassembly. So not very much information here on the reassembly. But we also want to, I guess I didn't go into that in the assembly. So the first thing that goes down is the plastic spacer. So there is actually use for this. And then goes the second curtain. And it goes on in the collapsed state. So the curtain must be kind of collapsed. And you just align it on those 3 posts and screw it down. So yeah, you definitely want to clean those spacers thoroughly because the grease on mine and the second model I had, the grease penetrated and sort of soaked those spacers. And if they're not free and free moving, then the curtain arms won't move as freely and will certainly get gummed up and slow down. So you want to clean the leaves and the plastic spacers and also the metal divider and spacers. Alright, so I basically just assembled the shutter. Again, please refer to the disassembly for accurate information on your reassembly. And here I'm kind of just going to show the shutter actually functions and put it back into the camera. So when you're reassembling the shutter, there's a brass, that brass kind of cap, dust cap. So you want to loosen. It depends on what model you. Actually, I think all models the dust cap slides on top of the screw. So you just loosen it and place it and put it in place. Be careful; it's very fragile, and be also sure to clean it thoroughly. And I eventually used some light seal material to replace the previous material that was there. And to replace the lacquer, I used some weld-on and just put a drop of weld-on. Put a drop of weld-on on each one of the screws. And then I pretty much just put the camera back into the camera. Again, I also did not show how to reroute that green wire, but again, just refer to the disassembly section of the video to see how that wire is routed so you can put it back in. And here I'm basically just testing the shutter. There is a release button you can access on the shutter. I'm not sure if it comes clearly in the video, but there it is. Shutter is working. And if you wanted to charge it, you'd have to pull the, they call it the blind, is it the blank shot prevention lever? You pull that away and then you can charge the shutter. Be careful though. It's that white plastic at the bottom. Just pull it out the way carefully. See, I didn't pull it very carefully and mine got stuck behind the motor winding completion contacts. You don't want to break those contacts either, because then you wouldn't have the blank shot prevention. So that blank shot prevention system is pretty fragile. So be very careful. But yeah, we can see the shutter is firing. Just a little. It wasn't too difficult to actually disassemble. I think it's tricky reassembling the shutter. You have to again pay attention, close attention to that disassembly video, and you shouldn't have any major problems. Well, so that's it for me. I will post another video detailing the actual final reassembly, and in that one again I also made a couple mistakes. I'm going to highlight those ones because I caught them early and show how to do it. And see you next one. And see you on the next video.